0. All engine running. We have a liftoff.
All right, I guess we should just say what's going on.
We thought it'd be a good time to talk about a part of the Apollo 11 mission that often gets overlooked, which was the quarantine, including time in a refitted Airstream trailer and a lab.
You're going to get to see some of the engineering that NASA's really famous for, but applied to a totally different problem, which is how do you keep a lunar plague from hitting the Earth?
Yeah.
We've done a few other episodes of this where one of us knows something, the other doesn't. This time, we've all just been cramming on quarantine facts about this Apollo 11 quarantine and seen so many men in like short sleeve shirts.
And we're going to talk to Amy Teitel from Vintage Space, a channel that Phil and I both really like.
So yeah, this is the quarantine edition of History Club. Yay.
I wanted to talk about the stuff before we get with Amy, though, like about the period of like the 20th century and vaccinations in general.
The moon landing is happening in July of 1969.
It was kind of an optimistic time in the middle of the 20th century. Measles, mumps, polio, these had all been beaten back, and like we felt pretty good about being able to contain potential diseases. Even though it's extremely low probability that anything contaminant was on the moon, if there was even a chance that they could bring something back, it would be truly novel and potentially devastating to life on Earth. All right, can you see that?
Yeah.
Oh wait, this is the quote that I love. They will be treated not as heroes, but as bearers of the most virulent, devastating plague the world has ever known. I love that. And plague is spelled wrong.
This is how Venom and Spider-Man got to Earth. So this is important stuff. This is an idea that we've become very familiar with now because we have the coronavirus is so dangerous is because no humans ever had it before. And if there were an alien lunar plague, no human had ever had it before. So it's kind of the same threat.
Which is why they took no chances and put them in quarantine. It's a very blunt approach, but it's really interesting that that was kind of like, this is our surest bet.
They've developed the need for this quarantine, and then they've got this problem of how to logistically make it happen to get these astronauts from the middle of the ocean all the way to the Lunar Receiving Lab in Houston.
With no exposure to Earth's environment at all.
Yes, in theory.
In theory.
Pete will be in the background.
Hey, Pete.
Hi, Pete. Nice to meet
He
you.
says meow. I gave him some catnip, so he's like a little bit stoned right now. It's pretty fun.
Okay. And so this first clip that I have is, let me load it up. So what they're practicing is they want to get the astronauts out of the command module and onto a helicopter, basically, with as little contamination as possible to try to preserve this quarantine. It makes sense that they had to train to do this, but it's still crazy to think about it, that like you're going through this excitement of being about to go to the moon and you're training for how you're going to get into your quarantine suit.
But it does make sense. I mean, how bad would it be if like the mission went off beautifully, everything was great, like rah America landing on the moon, and then they get back and they forget to put on the suit, right? And like someone falls in the ocean and then everyone gets sick, like womp womp, that'd be a big damper. So I kind of get it.
It's actually from when they were training with the BIG suits or big suits.
And that's the biological isolation garment, right?
Yeah.
I've only read it, so I don't know how it was pronounced in conversation.
It'd be way too cumbersome to not just say big suit.
I know, right? Especially NASA, the land of the acronym.
Yeah.
So here they're all just kind of chilling, waiting to go through the training.
I do love how much all this footage shows, like, being an astronaut is a lot of sitting and listening quietly.
Yeah, a lot of meetings.
Yeah. It looked like they brought it down upside down, too.
Yeah, they dumped it upside down and then inflate the balloons to flip it.
Inflate it. And that flotation collar is exactly what it sounds like. It adds buoyancy. and gives them a platform to step out of. Because again, like we learned from Gus Grissom in 1961, right, when his hatch blew early and the capsule filled with water and sunk, you kind of need to give some kind of barrier from the water rushing into this capsule. Otherwise, again, you end on a very poor note after a great mission. There's a very large issue with the whole quarantine thing in this move of like, you just opened the capsule. Quarantine for Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 as well started the moment they closed the hatch after the lunar EVA, the moonwalk. So everything that had been exposed was sealed up, and of course on the way back you're not opening the capsule at all. There's nothing to introduce anything new, no one's interacting with it. So you've got this thing that's been sealed for like 4 days, and then you just like open it up to the air and then reseal it. Like it's a bit of a weak link in the chain there, but there was no better option.
They also, they sprayed them down, right? They like threw the suits in, put them on, and then sprayed them with chemicals.
And so here that's them. They've gotten out. They're wearing the BIG suits, and this is just a practice run, but this is pretty much how it happened. And so then the next stage of their journey is they're in their big suits, and then they make it onto the USS Hornet, which is a big aircraft carrier, and their goal is to enter the mobile quarantine facility. So that is the next video that I have lined up here. That's why up here it says Hornet +3 on the mobile quarantine facility, because they're sort of, the astronauts are the additional 3 who are on the Hornet.
Oh wait, I think this is the clip when they walk out of their suits, the guy just in a tie just sprays it down after they walk by. I love that.
And so the people who went in there, it was a doctor, William Carpenter, and then John Hirosaki, who was like the project engineer, basically. And so those 2 guys are going inside and hanging out with these astronauts for the entire period that the mobile quarantine facility is traveling.
According to this, all of the stuff that was not human would be flown directly to the Lunar Receiving Lab. You know, the rocks were in these rock boxes that were very protected and also sterile. You want to kind of get that there as quickly as possible so that can get into a small plane and flown from the carrier deck. The ship, meanwhile, has to go to a base. It has to dock somewhere, at which point the MQF will be mobile, as its name. This very fancily named thing was just a converted Airstream trailer. So that gives you a sense of how not big it was.
Yeah, because they had to put it on a plane and a ship and drive it around.
The bottom of this plane opens, and then you just kind of roll this thing in, and then you fly it to Houston. Neil Armstrong played ukulele a bit, and there's a great picture of him, and I think it's through the glass in that window that Nixon was talking to them through, because it's got this like ghostly artifact in it that gives it this like ethereal feel almost, of just like he's in this little suit, just kind of sitting there, just like low-key strumming a ukulele.
About the MQF, they also like adjusted the air pressure, right? So it'd be lower pressure inside. So if there was a leak, air would go in, but not out.
Yeah, so they did regulate it that way.
And they've got these like souped up bars on the bottom, right? Like they ditched the wheels and they had to like reinforce it structurally. Oh, and they had a microwave, which is very new, right? In 1969. That's like a high-tech innovation. Like,
nice. The mini fridge. This is looking like a bit like a college dorm room right now.
Yeah, exactly.
They're landing at the Lunar Receiving Laboratory, or LRL, which is in Houston. It was especially built near what is now the Johnson Space Center. That was like one of the most state-of-the-art quarantinable facilities. Even the staff that went in had to go through like UV showers, and you could not have any medical thing. You could not be pregnant to work in there. Everything was super sterile. Anyone that was interacting with the crew had to be very, very clean and very healthy to make sure that the crew did not get sick, but also that they did not get you sick.
Is this the press room right here? Yeah, where they're celebrating his birthday?
I think that's the press room, yeah. So you can see, like, it looks like On the other side of the wall are a bunch of women, so probably the wives and family. So they can be there and celebrate, but they can't actually be in the same space. But in this side of the glass, where we are watching from, is the clean facility, and this is where they are celebrating Neil Armstrong's 39th birthday, because he was still in quarantine when that happened. This is so cute. I've never actually seen this footage of them making the cake. I've seen him cutting and serving the cake. This is awesome. If there was found to be something potentially bad in one of the samples, or if the crew got sick and there was some containment breach of the sick party, everyone who worked in the LRL signed a waiver saying they agreed, if they were exposed to a contaminant, that they would quarantine themselves for an indefinite period afterwards as directed by NASA. There's a lot in this, like the medical offices, there's a lot of beds. There's a lot of tables and things in the offices and living space. Like, that's a lot of people. And if the second diagram shows you that that's a third of the area of the entire LRL. Like, this is a big space for a lot of people to live and work.
In addition to the quarantine of the astronauts, what kind of experiments are going on in the other half of the Lunar Receiving Lab?
A lot of the experiments they were doing were looking at the rocks and classifying the rocks, bioclassifying if need be, to figure out exactly what they had gotten and figure out what's going to happen with these samples next. I think Apollo 11 didn't bring back too much because they did one short EVA. Later missions brought back a lot more.
And so I found some pretty crazy tables of some of the tests that they did on the biological elements. I'm going to tell you all this. One of the experiments they did was they ground up some moon rocks, made a formula out of it, and injected it into a Japanese quail.
What?
Why?
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 Just to see if it made the bird sick.
Like, why? Were they gonna do that to humans?
Did
they think moon rock dust is gonna be the new, like, street drug? Like,
right. All the kids are on moon dust.
And I mean, I think that's pretty much what they did to the mice too. They spend their time in the Lunar Receiving Lab. They don't have a moon plague.
They don't die.
They don't have a lunar plague. They don't have a moon bug. And then they get out, they go on this world tour. Everything's fine. Hip, hip, hooray.
Is there anything about the Apollo 11 quarantine, either procedurally or like kind of the context of how people were feeling about it at the time, that we didn't talk about?
How much NASA learned over its relatively short existence before Apollo 11's launch to anticipate the worst and hope for the best. Anticipating the crew dying at launch, anticipating the crew dying. I mean, there were abort procedures for every mission stage. There were speeches for if they died on the moon, down to what do we do if they pick up something deadly in space. I think it really speaks to how many people have to be involved to predict or to prepare for something like this. It speaks to how well NASA really thought outside the box, especially after the Apollo 1 fire, to anticipate everything that could possibly go wrong and put everything in place to mitigate that, so that if the worst happened, they would at least be the best prepared. And, you know, the LRL was built purposely for bringing them back from the moon. It was not like, let's just outfit this building. This was a custom facility for this need. And it's a lot of planning, a lot of preparation, but a lot of like acknowledging just how bad things could be to hopefully never have to get there.
People find you on YouTube, and you've also released a book. What is that about?
It's called Fighting for Space. I always have to read my own subtitle, The Two Pilots and Their Historic Battle for Female Spaceflight, and it's effectively a dual biography of two pilots who were navigating being professional flyers at a time when it was not common for women to be professional pilots, while America was making the transition from aviation to spaceflight, and what that meant for women that wanted to be involved.